Hail Mary, full of grace, the Lord is with thee. Blessed art thou among women, and blessed is the fruit of thy womb, Jesus.
Holy Mary, Mother of God, pray for us sinners, now and at the hour of our death. Amen.
In the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Ghost. Amen. So in my last sermon, I spoke on the madness of the modern world. There was plenty of material to talk about. And this week, I will speak on the madness of the COVID-19 pandemic. The two go together. And things are really heating up in the world, we could say, because what we're seeing is a lot of things coming together all at the same time, is what I'm noticing. And COVID-19 is just part of it, and they're all related. And so it's important to step back and take a look at the whole and say, just what has been going on here for the past 2 years, right? What did we notice? Because there's one thing, as I said, living in a mad world, that's what happens when you leave Christ. Because Christ, being the second person of the Blessed Trinity, he's the source of reality, the source of goodness, the source of truth. If you depart from that, there's only one other place. Right? There's only one other destination you're headed to. Lies, falsehood, delusion, and so on. And so when you start to notice, like it feels like I'm living in a delusional world, you should probably investigate that, right? And that's what we're going to do. We're going to look at what has happened over the past 2 years and notice, what do we see? What do we suspect? Because by your fruits you can know them. And Christ is the source of truth, the source of goodness. You're going to see that. If Christ is behind something, you're going to see that. But Satan, being the prince of darkness and the father of lies, you're going to notice that as well. If you start to see a bunch of lies, you can probably be certain Satan's probably behind this. So what do we see? Just some basic facts. The COVID-19 virus, in fact, it's a real virus. People get sick and people have died. I'm sure we all know, and we probably even have gotten sick from this virus. That can't be denied. There's a real, we would say, real pandemic. We should take it seriously. We should be considerate of other people. But it is nowhere near close to the worst pandemic the world's ever seen. And what has happened in the past 2 years are absolutely, completely unwarranted and unjustified by the level of danger this virus poses. So we're going to look at that. We're going to take a little trip down memory lane. And as I mentioned, we're going to look for signs of Satan, which is going to be lies, untruths, contradictions. So if you remember, right, let's go back here. Remember 2 weeks to flatten the curve? Remember that? Now, that was the first lie, but we all knew that was a lie from the beginning. Like, we knew, okay, that's yeah, right, 2 weeks to flatten the curve, whatever. But then there was more. Remember the masking debacle that happened? At first, masks were not important. Like, you don't need to wear masks, they're not helpful. And then it was, no, they are helpful. And then it was, now they're mandatory. And then it came out, we said they weren't helpful because we had to lie in order to save the masks for those people who really needed them. Remember that? And that was told by this health expert, Dr. I'm not going to say his name because I don't like saying the F word. But what we were just told, right, what they admitted when they said that is, whenever we think it's appropriate, whenever we think it's necessary, we're going to lie to you. They have just destroyed any credibility they ever had. How can they be believed from that point forward? If you know they will lie to you for your own good. So what are they lying to us about now? Right, that's what we should be asking ourselves. So from that point forward, from what was that, April, May of 2020, that entire department, that entire, the medical experts lost all credibility. They should not have been believed from that point forward. So that's the beginning. That's the beginning of the pandemic. And remember too, in COVID, how they were counting deaths. It was a daily death count. And there's the panic, the fear, and the projections. Oh, this is going to be in the millions. We're going to have hundreds of thousands of deaths by the summertime. Like, this is going to be bad. Like, brace yourselves. We got to get ready. Remember, they were bringing hospital ships off the shores to deal with all the people that were going to get, they were going to need them. Didn't happen. Didn't happen. In fact, it was so spectacularly underwhelming that they switched from counting deaths to counting cases. Do you remember that? Infection cases. And because they just couldn't get the numbers. And that, well, look, we said there were going to be hundreds of thousands of deaths. Well, let's just count hundreds of thousands of cases, and then we can kind of cover for ourselves. I remember that switch. I'm thinking, how dishonest. Because you had them saying, like, places like Sweden and Florida were completely irresponsible because they were not going on lockdown. There's going to be so many deaths. Sweden is going to reap the benefits of their irresponsibility because they didn't go on lockdown. There's going to be 2,800 deaths per day because of what they didn't do. That never happened. 2,800 deaths per day. Guess how many Sweden had? 40. That's a pretty big difference. And by the way, guess what their normal death count is per day? And that wasn't 40 COVID deaths, that was 40 deaths. What do they normally get per day? 40. Same thing with Florida. It was going to be this huge just cesspool of infections. Florida is doing better than many other states that went on full lockdown. So not only lies, but incompetence is there. Oh, and not only that, remember it was 160,000 deaths by the end of August or something, whenever it was. 160,000 COVID deaths. But only 9,000 of those did not have comorbidities. Remember that one? So what they said is out of 160,000, 150 had cancer, leukemia, bronchitis, gunshot wounds. Yeah. And that was true. They were counting everything as a COVID death. If you tested positive for COVID and then they died later, something else, that was a COVID fatality. And I remember that I think it was here. Man dies of COVID after being ejected through the windshield of his car in head-on collision. That was actually the case. That was the point where they started to backpedal and say, okay, maybe we inflated these a little bit. And that was corroborated by the chief, the CDC chief. What did he say? Robert Redfield. He admitted there was an incentive for hospitals to inflate COVID deaths. They get $100,000 reimbursement if somebody dies of COVID. So yeah, hospitals wouldn't lie to us for no reason. Exactly. That's the reason they lied to us. They were getting money. Admiral, what's his name here? Brett Giroir from the U.S. Health and Human Services Department also admitted this economic incentive, and he confirmed he was getting overinflated statistics on the number of deaths of COVID. And despite all these inflated deaths, they still weren't getting the numbers they said they would. And that's why they had to switch to the COVID cases. But even those are greatly inflated. Because you start testing a bunch of people, you could be asymptomatic. Like, I have no symptoms whatsoever. I don't feel bad. Oh, the test came up positive. You've got COVID. That's how you get hundreds and hundreds of thousands of cases. Still a reason to be afraid, people. Still a reason to be afraid. That famous, maybe infamous curmudgeon, the CEO of Tesla, Elon Musk, he went out and got 4 COVID tests in one day. And 2 were positive, 2 were negative. And he said, this is baloney. Half of these positives are not even cases at all. And you had people quarantining themselves in their room with no symptoms. They didn't feel sick, but I tested positive for COVID. Be careful, calling all their friends. I tested positive for COVID. That's living in a delusional world. And then what is it? There's been zero recorded cases of an asymptomatic person spreading COVID. That has never, ever been recorded. Plenty of cases of vaccinated people getting COVID and transmitting it. Now, I'm not saying there is not a sickness. Like I said, everybody's been sick. I know people have been sick, very sick. That is true. And that is something to be considered. But this just isn't the deadly pandemic we're being told. And these measures that are being taken are completely beyond all reason. This is a completely unreasonable response to something like this. And we need to be saying this. We need to be mentioning this because people today are losing their jobs because of it. Because they won't get the vaccine, which the government says you must get the vaccine because there's a deadly pandemic. And that is simply not true. And they're forcing it. We're in an abusive relationship, as I mentioned last time, over a falsehood. We are being asked by the government to live in a delusional world, which we can see with our own two eyes is not true. And that's immoral. And more people need to be mentioning this because I tell you, there is like I said, there's more going on than just COVID. And I don't know if you know this. Have you ever heard of the Great Reset or the World Economic Forum or the One World Government? Right. This was a conspiracy theory like 15, 20 years ago. But they're open about it now. Yes, this is what we're doing, and the entire world needs to embrace completely controlled commerce, energy. You're not going to own anything in the future because we'll own it all, but we'll give it to you fairly and equitably, and that's going to be great. That's not a conspiracy theory. They're telling us that. They're having forums and saying this is where the world is going. And guess what they're saying? COVID-19 is a great place to start. We're going to take advantage of what's happening and bring the world to this one world government. That's what they're trying to do. Now, you can fact check this on Google, right? Which I did. I wanted to fact check this. And the story came out, COVID-19 was planned by global elites to usher in the one world government. And the fact check, of course, was false. The global elites didn't plan COVID-19. They just took advantage of it to bring in the one world government. Well, thanks for the distinction. I'm not happy about either one. And we need to be talking about this. You need to be saying, if you're going along with COVID, these governments, these officials, they have an ulterior motive for you being afraid. Because the more afraid you are, the more authority you'll accept that you wouldn't otherwise have. That's what they're trying to do. And that's why they're fanning the fears. And we can't trust them. They've already proven, like the doctor whose name I'm not going to say, already lied to us. He admitted they're lying. The numbers are inflated. They're intentionally doing this to make us afraid, to make us compliant. And worse than the virus. Have you heard what's happening with the vaccine? They recently pulled the Johnson & Johnson vaccine and called it's on our unpreferred vaccination list. There's a report called the VAERS report, Vaccine Adverse Effect Reporting System. With the bird flu, swine flu, in the 2015 or so, 2010, they came up with a vaccine for that. And it was shut down after 200 adverse effects were reported through the system, because that's too many. 200 is too many. With the COVID vaccines, they've already had 80,000 adverse effects reported. And they're still continuing. Unbelievable. This is going to go down as one of the greatest human rights violations the world has ever seen, is what this is going to be reported as. And that's what we need to be talking about. And so when we're told, when we're being guilted into going along with this and wearing masks or social distancing or getting the vaccine and saying you have a moral obligation, absolutely not. Our moral obligation is to say, I'm not participating in your delusional version of reality. I'm not going to believe or pretend I believe the lie that you are peddling. That's our obligation, is to resist. If we don't resist now, the tyranny is coming. People are being denied medical treatment for not being vaccinated. It was a Colorado hospital here. There was a person who needed a kidney transplant. They were on the waiting list. Somebody finally came up. They had a donor. They had a recipient. Hospital wouldn't do the transplant. Why? You're not vaccinated. I don't have COVID. I'm not going to get anybody sick. Nope. You're not vaccinated. No treatment. How is it about health? Right? That's about power. That is about you doing what we tell you to do. But there's cause for hope. Facebook was forced to admit recently that their fact check was really just opinion check. They'll remove you from the platform. They'll delete your post because they don't agree with it. They called it a fact check, but they were forced to admit it's just opinion. It's not. It's factual, but we don't like it. That's why they take it off. And 75%, they did a poll recently, 75% of people believe that the media is lying to us. That was fascinating. 90% of Republicans believe the media is promoting their own political agenda rather than the facts. 65% of Democrats believe the same thing, and 70% of independents. So the lies are so obvious and so consistent that a lot of people are waking up. And what that tells me is people are going along with this mostly because they feel they have to. They don't actually believe it, but they feel forced. So I would say that really, those of us who just have known something's wrong all along, a lot of people feel that. A lot of people see that, but we feel so isolated. The whole job of the government is to make you believe you're the only one. Everybody else is on board except you. That's propaganda, that's psychological operations. You know the fatality rate? I fact-checked this. I saw this claim. COVID is 98% survivable. Fact check. False. COVID is 97.6% survivable. Gotcha. That's not that big of a difference. And the rates go from, I think, 94% for the most at risk up to 99.75%. This is not the deadly pandemic they are making it out to be. Now, God gave us a brain, and he expects us to use it. Right? And this is the irony in that for years, you remember being said, it was a pejorative against those who believed in God. Don't just believe what you're told, think for yourself. Now it's our turn to tell you people who are blindly following the government, stop just believing what you're told, because what you're told changes month to month. How can I believe the opposite of what I was told 6 weeks ago? I mean, how much violence do you want me to do to my own common sense? Use your brain. You can see you're being lied to. And that really that's the way to fight this, is live in reality. Live in reality. Look around you and ask yourself, how many people do I know have died from this virus? Is this a pandemic? In this parish of 2,000 people, right? I mean, COVID was over for me over a year ago when I started seeing some of this come out. COVID was over. And in this parish, we have had 2 people die in the entire pandemic with COVID, not of it, with it. Now, God rest their souls, right? Please pray for them, keep them in your prayers, but they had comorbidities. And I mean, in a parish this size, we're not able to do that great social distancing, right? So ask yourself, right, where's the pandemic? If it was real, how did we have, right, only those deaths? And look around you, in your families, in your homes, in your communities. Ask yourselves, should I believe what I'm told, or should I believe my own eyes? Live in reality. Now, take whatever measures you think. Like I said, the COVID disease is real. Take the precautionary measures that you think are appropriate. The mask, fine. I encourage you actually not to get the vaccine, but don't feel pressure. That's the important thing. Do not be bullied or pressured or guilted into something you really feel this is not true. Don't live in a delusional world. Live in reality. And I'm not the only one saying this. Cardinal Mueller from Germany recently gave a warning that these global elites are attempting to use the pandemic to usher in a total control surveillance state. It's happening. It is a reality. And if we're not talking about this, it's going to happen. Because you have any government official who starts to sense power, if they don't believe in Christ, they don't have a sense of virtue, they're going to go for it. That's fallen human nature. We have to be awake to that fact. But I thought today's gospel was by St. Luke, very appropriate for today. And that St. Luke is telling us the conditions when Christ came to the world. And they weren't that great. And he's very careful to be precise. He says, in the 15th year of the reign of Tiberius Caesar, Pontius Pilate was governor, Herod was tetrarch, Philip, his brother, was of Iturea, and Lysanias was a tetrarch of Abilene under the high priest, Annas and Caiaphas. And the word came to John, son of Zachary, in the desert around the Jordan. Extreme precision by St. Luke. He wants us to know the truth. He's telling us this is a real historical event. Christ came, this is when, this is who had power, this is what was going on. No shadows, no lies, fact. That's how you see truth, is when they're very, very clear about everything going on. And the thing is, he was listing the power brokers of the time. That was who was in power. And they were all corrupt. All of them were corrupt. And yet God still won. And that is our hope, and that is our confidence. That's our surety. Because no matter how bad the world is, no matter how many politicians or power brokers or global elites, whatever, in the church, all the way up to the top, even if everybody's corrupt, God will still come out ahead. God will still win. We are on the winning side. So I want you to be convinced of that. As I mentioned, live the truth, spend time in prayer, and realize that God will win in the end. Don't worry about anything else. Love God, live the truth, and you're going to be fine. So God bless you all. In the name of the Father, Son, and the Holy Ghost.